Captain James Wright stood at the viewport of his brother's home, looking out at the sprawling colony of New Eden. The settlement stretched across the valley floor, its buildings gleaming in the light of Epsilon Eridani, a star not unlike Earth's sun but with a distinct orange tint that gave the colony its unique glow. After 6 months in the cramped quarters of his scout ship, the open spaces and fresh air of New Eden felt like paradise. "More coffee?" asked Robert, his older brother, appearing at his side with a steaming pot. James nodded and held out his cup. "Thanks, I still can't believe how much this place has grown. 3 million people now?" 3.2 million according to last month's count, Robert said with pride. He had been among the first wave of colonists 15 years ago, when New Eden was nothing but prefab shelters and ambitious plans. Now his wife Lisa managed one of the colony's largest hydroponic farms, and their 10-year-old son Michael attended a school that rivaled Earth's finest. "Uncle James!" Michael came running into the room holding a small model spaceship. "Is this one like yours?" James knelt down and examined the toy with exaggerated seriousness. "Almost, but mine doesn't have these fancy guns on the side. My scout ship is built for speed, not fighting." "But what if you meet aliens?" Michael asked, his eyes wide. "In 200 years of space exploration, we haven't found any intelligent alien life," James replied, ruffling the boy's hair. "Just plants and simple animals." The colony's emergency siren chose that moment to blare, its wailing sound cutting through the peaceful morning. James froze, years of military training kicking in. Robert moved to the window, confusion on his face. "Probably another drill," Robert said, but his voice lacked conviction. James was already reaching for his communicator when the sky turned blood red. A massive shadow fell across the colony as something enormous moved into position above New Eden. "Get to the shelter," James ordered, military authority replacing his relaxed demeanor. "Now!" The colony's defense systems came online, a network of ground-based energy cannons that could handle pirate ships or asteroids. They fired upward at the massive object, but the beams seemed to dissolve harmlessly against an invisible barrier. James's communicator buzzed with an incoming colony-wide broadcast. "Unidentified vessels detected in orbit. This is not a drill. All citizens proceed to emergency shelters immediately." Robert grabbed Michael while Lisa rushed in from the kitchen. "What's happening?" she asked, fear in her eyes. Before James could answer, a beam of intense blue light shot down from the ship above, striking the colony's main power plant. The explosion rattled windows throughout the settlement, and the lights flickered before emergency power kicked in. "We need to get to my ship," James said, making a quick decision. "It's at the spaceport on the eastern edge. If we hurry," another explosion, closer this time, knocked them off their feet. Through the window, James saw more beams striking key points around the colony. The defense control center, the communications array, the spaceport. "They're taking out our infrastructure," he muttered, military training helping him analyze the attack pattern. "This isn't random. They know exactly what they're targeting." "Who are they?" Lisa asked, holding Michael close. "I don't know," James admitted. "But we need to move." The family rushed to Robert's ground vehicle, a sturdy transport designed for the colony's rough terrain. As they drove through increasingly chaotic streets, James tried to contact his crew at the spaceport. Static was his only answer. Above them, smaller craft were now descending from the massive ship, sleek angular vessels that moved with impossible speed. They fired more precisely, targeting defense installations and government buildings. "The secondary spaceport," James said suddenly. "The one they use for maintenance. My scout ship isn't there, but there might be something we can use." Robert nodded grimly and changed direction, driving away from the colony center where most of the destruction was concentrated. The secondary spaceport was little more than a collection of hangars and repair bays at the edge of the settlement, used primarily for service and emergency landings. As they approached, a message came through, on all frequencies in perfect Earth Standard language. "Your expansion ends here. Return to your homeworld or face extinction." The voice was flat, emotionless, with an artificial quality that suggested translation technology. "They're talking to us," Lisa whispered. "Actual aliens." "Not very friendly ones," James replied, scanning the spaceport ahead. Most of the ships were undergoing repairs, but he spotted a transport vessel that looked operational. There, that supply runner might have enough fuel to reach the jump point. The spaceport was deserted, its workers having fled to shelters or been caught in the initial attack. James used his military override codes to access the transport ship, a blocky vessel designed to carry goods rather than people, but equipped with basic life support. "Everyone inside," he ordered, helping Lisa and Michael up the ramp while Robert gathered emergency supplies from a nearby storage locker. Through the viewports, they could see more devastating beams striking the colony. Buildings collapsed, and fire spread rapidly through residential areas. The colony's limited defensive fire was weakening as more installations were destroyed. James powered up the transport systems, praying that its engines would respond. The ship hummed to life and relief washed over him, until a shadow fell across the cockpit. One of the alien vessels hovered directly overhead, its weapons ports glowing with energy. "Hang on!" James shouted, slamming the thrust controls forward. Die. Transport lurched out of the hangar moments before a beam struck where they had been, vaporizing the structure. James guided the ungainly vessel upward, pushing its engines beyond safe limits. The alien craft pursued, but seemed more interested in continuing the colony assault than chasing one fleeing ship. As they climbed through the atmosphere, the full horror became clear. The alien vessel was enormous, at least 10 kilometers long, with dozens of smaller craft swarming around it. And it wasn't alone. 2 more ships of similar size were positioned around the colony. "They're going to destroy everything," Robert said, his voice hollow as he watched through the rear viewport. James activated the transport's long-range sensors, recording everything they could detect about the alien ships: energy signatures, composition, weapons capabilities. It wasn't much, but it might give Earth a fighting chance when, these beings attacked again. The transport shuddered as it pushed beyond the atmosphere. James set course for the system's jump point, where they could enter faster than light travel back to the nearest human outpost. "We can't just leave," Lisa protested, tears streaming down her face. "We have to warn Earth," James replied grimly. "We're the only ones who can." As the transport limped toward the jump point, they watched through the sensors as the alien ships methodically reduced New Eden to ash. The colony that had taken decades to build was destroyed in hours, 3 million lives erased. Michael slept fitfully in his mother's arms, unaware that his home no longer existed. Robert and Lisa sat in stunned silence, occasionally reaching for each other's hands. James stored the sensor data and prepared the jump calculations. His military training kept him functioning despite the shock and grief. One thought burned in his mind, growing from a spark to a raging fire. They would pay for this. Humanity would not cower. Humanity would not retreat. For every soul lost on New Eden, 1,000 ships would answer. The journey back to Earth took 6 days in the stolen transport ship. 6 days of nightmares for James, his mind replaying the destruction of New Eden each time he closed his eyes. 6 days of watching his brother's family grieve for their home and friends. 6 days of planning what he would say to Earth's leaders. When they finally reached Earth orbit, they were met by a military escort. News of New Eden's silence had already reached the home planet, but no one knew what had happened. The sight of a civilian transport arriving instead of Captain Wright's scout ship had raised immediate concerns. Admiral Thompson waited in the debriefing room at Earth Defense Headquarters. She was a tall woman with gray-streaked hair and eyes that missed nothing. 20 years commanding the defense fleet had left her with a reputation for being tough but fair. "Captain Wright," she said as James entered. Her eyes darted to the civilians, behind him. "I wasn't informed you had passengers." "My brother and his family," James replied. "The only survivors of New Eden that I know of." The room went silent. Admiral Thompson's composure cracked for just a moment before she regained control. "Survivors? You mean?" "New Eden is gone," James said, his voice flat. "Completely destroyed by an alien force with technology far beyond ours." He connected his data chip to the room's display system. Images appeared on the screen. The massive alien ships, the devastating weapons, the methodical destruction of an entire colony. I recorded everything I could, James explained. Sensor readings, energy, signatures, weapons capabilities. They called themselves the Vex. At least that's the closest I can translate. They left a message before they started firing. He played the recorded message. Your expansion ends here. Return to your homeworld or face extinction. Admiral Thompson studied the data with a grim expression. You did well to bring this back, Captain. Your quick thinking may have given us a chance. She turned to an aide. Call an emergency session of the United Earth Government. All representatives, including those from the colonies. Priority 1. 3 days later, representatives from every human settlement gathered in the Grand Assembly Hall in Geneva. Colony. Leaders participated via holographic projection, their faces showing varying degrees of shock and fear as they learned about New Eden's fate. James sat with his brother's family in a private section, all of them still wearing borrowed clothes. Robert stared blankly ahead, while Lisa tried to keep Michael occupied with a tablet game. The boy was too young to fully understand what had happened, but he knew enough to be quieter than any 10-year-old should be. Admiral Thompson stood at the central podium, her uniform crisp and perfect, her posture unyielding. The hall fell silent as she began to speak. 3 days ago, we received confirmation that New Eden Colony was destroyed by an alien force calling themselves the Vex. Over 3 million of our people were killed in an unprovoked attack. The evidence suggests this was not a misunderstanding or a limited conflict, but a deliberate act of genocide. Murmurs ran through the assembly. On the screen showing the colonial representatives, faces paled. The Vex left a message demanding that we cease all expansion and retreat to Earth or face extinction. Thompson paused, letting the words sink in. I am here today to tell you what our answer will be. She gestured, and the large screen behind her displayed images of New Eden before the attack, the thriving colony, the schools, the farms, the people. They believed destroying one colony would break our will to explore the stars. They believed we would cower and retreat. They do not understand humanity. Her voice grew stronger. For every life taken on New Eden, 1,000 ships will answer. The assembly erupted in a mix of cheers and shocked exclamations. Thompson raised her hand for silence. I propose an immediate shift to wartime production across all human settlements. Every shipyard, factory, and fabrication plant will be converted to military manufacturing. Scientists and engineers will focus on developing countermeasures to Vex technology based on Captain Wright's data. The Mars representative, a thin man with the pale skin of someone who lived under domes, spoke up. 1,000 ships for every life? That's over 3 billion vessels. We don't have the resources or time. It's not literal, interrupted the representative from Europa, a dark-skinned woman whose family had led the Ice Moon's settlement for generations. It's a statement of intent, but I agree with the Admiral. We must respond with overwhelming force, Thompson nodded. I propose a fleet of 900,000 ships. It's an ambitious number, but achievable if we commit all our resources and work together. This won't be just a military response, but a message to any other species watching. Attack humanity at your peril. The debate lasted for hours. Some argued for attempting communication first. Others feared committing so completely to war might leave human settlements vulnerable to other threats. But as the day wore on, the images of New Eden's destruction kept returning to the screens, and with them, resolve hardened. James was called to speak about what he had witnessed. He stood tall despite his exhaustion and grief. I watched my nephew's school vaporized, he said simply. I saw farms burning and hospitals collapsing. The Vex didn't try to communicate before attacking. They didn't target only military installations. They methodically erased an entire human settlement from existence. He paused. We can try to talk to them, but we should do it from a position of strength, not fear. By day's end, the vote was nearly unanimous. Operation Righteous Response would begin immediately. Humanity was going to war. James found himself promoted to commander and given leadership of a special operations unit. Their mission: gather intelligence on the enemy while the fleet was being built. "We need to know more about what we're facing," Admiral Thompson told him in her office a week after the assembly. "Your scout ship has been upgraded with the best stealth technology we have. Your job is to infiltrate the edge of what we believe is Vex territory and bring back information." James looked at the star chart on her desk, noting the systems marked with red warning symbols. "These are all beyond the range of our normal patrols." "Yes, and that may be why the Vex targeted New Eden first. It was our farthest colony, pushing into space they apparently consider theirs." Thompson's eyes were hard. "Your brother and his family will be given new identities and a home on Earth, with full government support. I understand if you want to stay with them." "No," James interrupted. "I need to do this, for them, and for everyone on New Eden." 1 month later, James and his crew of 12 departed Earth in their modified scout ship, now renamed Memory of Eden. Their mission would take them dangerously close to where the Vex had been encountered, with no guarantee of return. As the ship entered the jump point and disappeared from Earth's sensors, production was already underway across the solar system. Shipyards on Earth, Mars, and the moons of Jupiter and Saturn worked around the clock. Ships designed for exploration and colonization were being retrofitted with weapons and armor. In laboratories, scientists studied the data James had brought back, looking for weaknesses in Vex technology. The first breakthrough came when they discovered a unique frequency that disrupted the alien shielding systems. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Humanity had been attacked, but humanity would not fall. The Vex had destroyed one colony, believing it would force a retreat. They would soon learn how wrong they were. 6 months into the mission, Commander James Wright's scout ship Memory of Eden drifted silently at the edge of a star system 30 light-years from where New Eden had stood. The ship's enhanced stealth systems made it nearly invisible to sensors, allowing James and his crew to observe Vex activities without detection. "Another supply convoy," reported Tina, the sensor specialist. Her eyes never left the screen as she recorded the movement of 5 Vex vessels. "Same route as the others. They're definitely supplying something in the Arcturus system." James moved to stand behind her, studying the data. After months of careful observation, they had mapped significant portions of Vex territory. The picture emerging was surprising. "Still no sign of any major fleet movements," he noted. "Their patrol patterns suggest they're defending only 16 star systems, not the vast empire we feared." Lieutenant Marcus, the tactical officer, nodded in agreement. "Their technology is impressive, but their numbers don't match what we expected. I count fewer than 5,000 ships total across all monitored systems." "They attacked New Eden because they feared our expansion," James said, the realization crystallizing in his mind. "Not because they were already planning a full invasion." He moved to the communication station. "Prepare a data packet for Earth. Include all our observations and my assessment. The Vex are technologically superior but limited in scope and numbers. They struck New Eden as a warning, expecting us to retreat in fear." As the encrypted message was prepared for transmission, James stared at the star map they had compiled. The Vex homeworld had been identified, a planet orbiting a yellow star very similar to Sol. Images showed sprawling cities and massive orbital structures, evidence of a highly advanced civilization. "What do you think Earth will do with this information, Commander?" asked Marcus. "It won't change our response," James replied, his voice firm. "But it might change our strategy. The Vex need to learn that humanity doesn't scare easily." 1 year after the fall of New Eden, Admiral Thompson stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned dreadnought Remembrance. Through the massive viewports, she watched as ships gathered in Earth orbit, thousands upon thousands of vessels ranging from tiny fighters to enormous carriers. Thompson's aide, Lieutenant Perez, approached with a tablet. "Final count confirmed. Admiral, 900,000 vessels assembled and ready. It's magnificent." Thompson nodded, allowing herself a moment of pride. The industrial achievement was unprecedented in human history. Shipyards across the solar system had worked without pause for a year, an effort that united humanity like nothing before. "Status report from the fleet commanders?" she asked. "All sections report ready," Perez replied. "Admiral Davis commands the vanguard of 300,000 ships. Admiral Khatri leads the main battle group of 400,000. You command the strategic reserve of 200,000. Thompson studied the tactical display showing the vast armada. Each dot represented a ship. The screen was so crowded with them that they formed a solid mass in Earth orbit. Never in history had humans assembled such a force. And Commander Wright's special forces? His teams are distributed throughout the fleet, prepared for ground operations once we reach Vex territory. The intelligence he gathered has been crucial to our planning." Thompson nodded. Wright's mission had revealed vital information. Most importantly, that the Vex were not the unstoppable empire they had initially feared. Their technology was superior, but their territory was limited to a handful of star systems. They had attacked New Eden not from a position of overwhelming strength, but from fear of human expansion. A message alert sounded, and the main screen shifted to show the face of President Garcia of the United Earth Government. "Admiral Thompson," the president said, her expression solemn, "the final authorization has been given. Operation Righteous Response may commence at your discretion." Thompson straightened, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. "Understood, Madam President. We will not fail." After the call ended, Thompson turned to her communications officer. "Open a channel to all ships." The officer worked his console. "Channel open, Admiral. You're addressing the entire fleet." Thompson took a deep breath before speaking, her words traveling to 900,000 vessels and the millions of men and women who crewed them. "This is Admiral Thompson. 1 year ago, an alien force destroyed the colony of New Eden, killing over 3 million innocent people. Today, we answer that atrocity. Our mission is clear: to ensure that no human colony will ever again face such a threat." She paused, looking out at the assembled fleet. "We carry with us the memory of New Eden, but we also carry the future of humanity. We fight not only for vengeance, but for our right to exist among the stars without fear. The Vex believed that destroying one colony would break our will. Today they learn how wrong they were." Throughout the fleet, crews listened in. Silence. On fighters designed for speed and maneuverability, pilots ran final checks on their systems. On massive carriers housing hundreds of smaller craft, flight crews prepared for launch. On specialized electronic warfare platforms, technicians monitored the new weapons designed specifically to counter Vex shielding technology. Thompson concluded her address. "Each ship in this fleet represents the work of countless hands. Each crew member represents the unbreakable spirit of humanity. Together we make this promise to the memory of New Eden. You are not forgotten, and you will be avenged." She nodded to her navigation officer. "Initiate jump sequence. All ships, to follow in formation." In the lead scout ship, Commander James Wright received the order to jump. His vessel would be among the first to arrive in Vex territory, tasked with confirming the enemy positions before the main fleet arrived. As his ship prepared to enter the jump point, James thought of his brother's family. Robert, Lisa, and Michael had been given a new home on Earth, but their lives would forever bear the scar of New Eden's destruction. Michael, now 11, still had nightmares about the day the sky turned red. "Jump calculations complete, Commander," reported his navigator. "Ready on your order." James nodded. "Take us in." The scout ship disappeared into the jump point, followed by thousands of others. Across the solar system, humans watched news reports of the fleet's departure with a mixture of pride, hope, and apprehension. For the first time in its history, humanity was taking war to the stars. In shipyards throughout human space, production continued. Though 900,000 ships had departed, more were being built. A clear message that humanity's response would not end with this first wave. The industrial machine that had been set in motion would not easily stop. On the rebuilt bridge of the Civilian, transport that had carried him and his family to safety, Robert Wright watched the fleet depart. The ship had been repaired and upgraded, now serving as a medical support vessel in the fleet's rear echelon. "For New Eden," Robert whispered, thinking of the home and life they had lost. Throughout the Armada, the same sentiment echoed. For New Eden, for humanity, for the future. The great assembly of ships, the largest fleet ever created by human hands, vanished into jump points across the solar system, bound for Vex territory and the reckoning that awaited. The first wave of 300,000 human ships emerged from jump points at the edge of the Vex star system, designated Target Alpha. Commander James Wright's scout ship was among the first to arrive, its advanced sensors immediately scanning for enemy positions. Multiple Vex vessels detected, reported Tina, her fingers flying across the sensor station. Approximately 2,000 ships in defensive positions around the third planet. James studied the tactical display. The Vex had arranged their ships in a spherical formation around their colony world, a standard defensive posture. What wasn't standard was their reaction, or lack thereof. They're not moving to intercept, James noted with surprise. Either they don't see us yet, or they're in shock, finished Lieutenant Marcus. Our intelligence suggested they never expected a human response of this magnitude. James opened a channel to Admiral Davis's flagship. Commander Wright reporting. Vex fleet confirmed at Target Alpha, approximately 2,000 vessels. They appeared to be in a defensive posture only. No indication of advance toward our position. Admiral. Davis's voice came through clearly. Understood, Commander. Continue monitoring. Main battle group will emerge in 5 minutes. Be advised that we are detecting unusual communications traffic between Vex vessels. They appear to be panicking. James couldn't help the grim smile that crossed his face. They expected us to cower after New Eden. They never imagined this. As predicted, 5 minutes later, the main battle group of 400,000 ships emerged from their jump points. The human fleet now stretched across an enormous section of space, dwarfing the Vex defensive force. On the Vex command ship, Supreme Commander Krell stared at the sensor readings in disbelief. The translator implant in his brain struggled to find the right words in his language for what he was seeing. Impossible, he finally managed. Their fleet, it cannot be this large. His second-in-command, Officer Tarn, was equally stunned. The humans were supposed to retreat after we destroyed their colony. Our analysts predicted they would abandon their expansion plans and return to their home system. Obviously, Krell hissed, the analysts were wrong. A communication officer approached, his posture showing extreme distress, a universal body language that James Wright would have recognized despite the alien physiology. Supreme Commander, we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet. It is being broadcast on all frequencies. Krell straightened his 7-foot frame. Display it. The main screen showed Admiral Thompson's face, her expression cold and determined. This is Admiral Anna Thompson of the United Earth Defense Fleet. 1 year ago, your forces destroyed our colony of New Eden, killing over 3 million civilians without provocation or warning. We are here to ensure that never happens again. Krell listened as the translation software converted her words. You have 2 options, Thompson continued. Immediate and unconditional surrender, with reparations to be determined for the people of New Eden, or total war against the combined might of humanity. You have 1 hour to respond. The transmission ended, leaving the Vex command center in silence. 1 hour, Tarn finally said. They give us 1 hour to decide the fate of our entire species. Krell moved to the tactical display, studying the overwhelming human force. The Vex had always relied on their superior technology rather than numbers. That advantage meant nothing against a fleet of this size. Send to all vessels, he ordered. Prepare for battle. On the bridge of the Remembrance, Admiral Thompson received the Vex response. They're rejecting our terms. Her communications, officer reported. All Vex vessels are powering weapons. Thompson had expected this. The Vex had shown their character at New Eden. They wouldn't surrender easily. All ships, this is Admiral Thompson. The enemy has chosen to fight. Execute Battle Plan Omega. Throughout the human fleet, crews moved to battle stations. Fighters launched from carrier ships. Electronic warfare vessels activated their jamming systems. targeting the specific frequencies that Commander Wright's intelligence had identified as critical to Vex shield technology. The battle began with a massive, coordinated assault. Thousands of human fighters swarmed toward the Vex defensive line, drawing fire while larger vessels moved into position. Though the Vex weapons were more powerful, they couldn't target the overwhelming number of small craft attacking from all directions. James Wright led a special operations team aboard a stealth insertion craft. Their mission was to board one of the smaller Vex vessels and capture it intact, securing valuable technology and possibly prisoners for interrogation. Approaching target, the pilot announced. Their shields are fluctuating, the jammers are working. James checked his tactical gear one last time. Remember, we need the ship's systems intact, use shock weapons only, and avoid damaging the control center. His team of 12 nodded in understanding. They were the best of Earth's special forces, trained specifically for this mission over the past year. The insertion craft attached to the Vex ship's hull using magnetic clamps. Cutting tools quickly created an entry point, and James led his team inside. The interior was strange, corridors designed for beings larger than humans with an odd green-blue light that made shadows appear deeper than they should. They encountered the first Vex crew members near what appeared to be an engineering section. The aliens were tall, with grayish skin and 4 arms. They carried energy weapons but seemed unprepared for close-quarters combat. James fired his shock rifle, sending one Vex crumpling to the deck. His team quickly subdued the others. As they moved deeper into the ship, resistance became more organized but still manageable. The Vex, it seemed, were not warriors by nature. Their power came from their technology, not combat skill. The team reached the bridge and secured it within minutes. James ordered the captured crew to be restrained but treated with care. One of his team, a xenolinguist named Dr. Hall, began attempting to communicate with the ship's commander. "They're scared," Dr. Hall reported after a brief exchange. "They never expected us to respond like this. Their leader keeps asking why we brought so many ships." James activated his communication link. "Admiral Thompson, this is Commander Wright. We've secured a Vex vessel with minimal damage. Beginning data extraction now." While James's team worked to download the Vex ship's database, the main battle raged throughout the system. The human fleet's sheer numbers overwhelmed the Vex defenses, despite their technological advantage. Where Vex ships managed to destroy human vessels with their powerful weapons, 10 more human ships moved to fill the gap. Admiral Davis coordinated the attack on the main Vex orbital stations, while Admiral Khatri's forces targeted the defensive platforms protecting the planet below. The human strategy wasn't subtle. It didn't need to be. Overwhelming force applied with a clear objective: total control of the system. On his captured Vex vessel, James received a priority transmission from Admiral Thompson. "Commander, we're detecting unusual energy readings from the Vex homeworld. They may be preparing some kind of last resort weapon. Your new objective is to find information about this weapon in the ship's database." James redirected his team immediately. With the help of the translation software developed from his earlier intelligence gathering, they searched through the alien computer systems. "Found something," reported his tech specialist. "It's not a weapon. It's a communication array. They're sending a distress signal to other Vex systems." James felt a chill. If the Vex could summon reinforcements, the battle might become more complicated. "Admiral," he reported, "the Vex are calling for help. We need to take out their long-range communication systems immediately." Thompson's response was immediate. "Understood. Redirecting strike forces now." Within minutes, precision strikes from human bombers destroyed the massive communication arrays on the Vex world's surface. The distress signal cut off mid-transmission. By the 6-hour mark, the battle was effectively over. The Vex fleet was decimated, their orbital defenses destroyed. Human ships surrounded the planet, weapons trained on key population centers. "Admiral." Thompson opened a channel to the Vex planetary government. "Your fleet is destroyed. Your defenses are gone. Surrender now and your people will be spared. Refuse, and we will have no choice but to continue our attack." This time, the Vex response was immediate. A different alien face appeared on the screen. this one marked with symbols that suggested a political rather than military leader. "We surrender," the Vex leader said through the translation system. "Please, no more destruction. We will meet any terms." The first system had fallen. To the human fleet, Operation Righteous Fury had begun. The human fleet moved through Vex territory like an unstoppable tide. System after system fell, each victory faster than the last as the Vex's limited military resources were stretched beyond breaking. 3 months after the first battle, Admiral Thompson stood on the bridge of the Remembrance, reviewing the latest reports. "5 systems secured, Admiral," Lieutenant Perez reported. "Only the Vex homeworld remains. Their remaining fleet has consolidated there, approximately 1,000 ships." Thompson nodded. "Status of our forces?" "We've lost 22,000 vessels across all operations," Perez replied. "Most were smaller craft. The majority of our capital ships remain intact." 22,000 ships, a devastating number in any other context. But against the backdrop of 900,000, it represented a remarkably small loss. The Vex technology was superior, but they simply couldn't match humanity's industrial might and determination. "And Commander Wright's team? They've completed analysis of the captured Vex databases. His report was sent to your personal terminal an hour ago. He's requesting to speak with you directly, Admiral. Says it's urgent." Thompson raised an eyebrow. James Wright wasn't one for exaggeration. "Put him through to my ready room." In the privacy of her office adjoining the bridge, Thompson activated the secure communication system. James's face appeared on the screen, looking troubled despite their overwhelming success. "Commander, what have you found?" "Something that changes everything, Admiral," James replied. "My team has been translating Vex historical records from the captured ships. The attack on New Eden, it wasn't authorized by their central government." Thompson leaned forward. "Explain." "The Vex have had a military faction called the Protectors, extremists who believed any expansion by other species represented an existential threat. They operated with significant autonomy." James paused. "According to these records, this faction launched the attack on New Eden against the orders of the Vex ruling council. Are you saying their government didn't approve the attack?" Thompson asked, her voice carefully controlled. "Not only did they not approve it, they tried to stop it." James sent several translated documents to her screen. "The ruling council sent ships to intercept the attack force, but they were too late. After New Eden was destroyed, there was internal conflict. The military faction seized control, claiming that an overwhelming human response was coming and only they could save the Vex." Thompson was silent for a long moment, processing this information. "And this military faction is the one we've been fighting?" "Yes. But according to these most recent records, they've been overthrown. The original government has regained control of the homeworld after our last victory." James's expression was grim. "We've been at war with the wrong Vex, Admiral. The Remembrance led the final approach to the Vex homeworld, a blue-green planet orbiting a yellow star. The remaining human fleet, still over 870,000 ships strong, formed a sphere around the system ready for the final battle. But the expected resistance didn't materialize. Instead, a transmission came from the planet's surface requesting direct communication with the human leadership. In the Remembrance's conference room, a holographic projector displayed the image of the Vex High Chancellor, the leader of their civilian government. Standing beside Admiral Thompson were Commander James Wright and President Garcia, who had traveled from Earth to witness the end of the conflict. "High Admiral," the Vex leader began, using Thompson's incorrectly translated title, "We formally request an end to hostilities and offer our unconditional surrender." President Garcia stepped forward. "We accept your surrender, but before we discuss terms, we need answers. Over 3 million of our people died at New Eden. Someone must be held accountable." The High Chancellor's forearms moved in a complex gesture that the translation software interpreted as deep regret. "The destruction of your colony was not authorized by our government. The military faction responsible has been removed from power. Those who ordered the attack have been imprisoned and await justice." "Justice?" James couldn't help interrupting. What justice can there be for 3 million dead? The Vex leader turned toward him. No justice can restore lives lost. But we offer not only accountability but reparation. The alien pressed something on a control panel. We wish to share with humanity all our technological advancements, medical, scientific, engineering, and we offer our knowledge of other species in this sector of the galaxy, some of whom pose greater threats than we ever did. Admiral Thompson studied the Vex carefully. Why would you share such valuable resources? Because we recognize now what we failed to see before, the High Chancellor replied. Humanity is not merely another expanding species. You are a force, unlike any we have encountered. When faced with the destruction of one colony, you responded with a fleet that could conquer worlds. Your industrial capacity, your unity of purpose, these are strengths we cannot match. The alien's translator conveyed a tone of genuine respect. We believed ourselves superior because of our technology. You have shown us that technology alone does not determine a species' power. Better to have humanity as allies than enemies. President Garcia and Admiral Thompson exchanged glances. This was more than they had expected. Not just victory, but the potential for a significant advancement of human civilization. We will need guarantees, Thompson said. Verification of your claims about the military faction, oversight of the transfer of technology, and most importantly, a formal acknowledgement of responsibility for New Eden. All of this and more, the High Chancellor agreed. We also propose a joint memorial to honor those lost, a place of remembrance and commitment that such actions will never be repeated. 1 year later, James Wright stood on the rebuilt central plaza of New Eden. The colony had been reconstructed with Vex assistance, its buildings more advanced and secure than before. New inhabitants had begun to settle there, drawn by the opportunity to be part of humanity's most distant outpost. In the center of the plaza stood a monument of black stone and glowing blue crystal, a combination of human and Vex artistic styles. Etched into the stone were the names of every person who had died in the original attack. Below the names was an inscription in both human and Vex languages. We explore in peace but answer violence with overwhelming force. Remember New Eden. Robert, Lisa, and Michael stood beside James looking up at the monument. Michael, now 12, placed a small toy spaceship at its base, the same model he had shown James on that fateful day 2 years ago. Do you think there will be more fighting? Michael asked. James put his hand on his nephew's shoulder. Not with the Vex. And if other threats emerge, they'll face both our species, not just one. The alliance between humans and Vex had already yielded remarkable advances. Vex medical technology had extended human lifespans. Human manufacturing methods had revolutionized Vex production. Together, they were stronger than either would have been alone. Admiral Thompson approached, now wearing the formal uniform of the newly formed Interstellar Defense Command. Commander Wright, or should I say Director Wright, your new office at the Joint Species Intelligence Agency is ready. James nodded. Thank you, Admiral. I'll report there next week. He had accepted a role coordinating information about potential threats to both human and Vex interests, a position that would help ensure nothing like the New Eden disaster ever happened again. As the sun set over the new colony, ships could be seen in orbit, some human, some Vex, all working together to build defensive systems that would protect this restored world. The Vex had destroyed one human colony. 900,000 human ships had been humanity's reply. And from that show of strength had come not just victory but something more valuable, understanding and alliance. The stars remained open to exploration, and humanity's place among them was secure.